Some women find themselves alone not because they want to be, but because life has quietly shaped their path that way. It isn't always a conscious decision. Sometimes it's a slow drift. A woman might move to a new city for work or love, leaving behind familiar faces, only to realize that building new friendships in adulthood is harder than she ever imagined. People already have their circles, routines, and commitments. Invitations don't come easily, and when they do, they may feel awkward, forced, or simply not meaningful enough to lead to something lasting. Other times, friendships fade with time not due to arguments or betrayal, but just the natural evolution of life. Marriage, children, demanding jobs, or even differing lifestyles can pull people in different directions. One day she wakes up and realizes she hasn't talked to anyone just because in weeks. No one texts just to check in. Her phone is full of names, but none she would call in a moment of personal crisis. It's a quiet ache that builds over time, never dramatic, never loud, but always present. Some women experience betrayal or repeated disappointment in friendships. After giving their trust, showing up consistently, and investing emotionally, they find themselves used, overlooked, or misunderstood. After being hurt a few times, they might decide consciously or not that it's safer to pull back, to rely only on themselves. They stop reaching out first. They smile politely, but keep a certain emotional distance. They tell themselves they're better off alone, even if some part of them still longs for connection. Social anxiety also plays a role for many. The fear of not fitting in, of being too much or not enough, can be paralyzing. A woman might want to connect, to belong, but finds herself held back by insecurities rooted deep in childhood or past experiences. She overthinks every message, every interaction. She convinces herself that people don't really want her around. Eventually, it feels easier not to try. There's also a silent shame that surrounds being a woman with no friends. Society often teaches that women are naturally social, that they thrive in sisterhood and community. A woman who doesn't have a tribe is viewed with suspicion. What's wrong with her? Why doesn't anyone want to be around her? She may begin to internalize those questions, believing she is flawed, broken, or unworthy. The silence around female loneliness only deepens the wound. Few people talk about it openly, which makes the experience feel even more isolating. But this kind of isolation isn't always the result of personality flaws or antisocial tendencies. Sometimes it's simply the reality of how unpredictable and messy life can be. People change, priorities shift, connections falter. The world doesn't always make space for deep, meaningful friendships, especially for women juggling careers, families, and personal healing. The absence of friendship doesn't mean a woman is unlovable or incapable of connection. It just means her story looks different right now. Understanding that isolation isn't always chosen can open the door to empathy, not just from others, but from within. A woman in this space doesn't need judgment or pity. She needs understanding. She needs hope. And most of all, she needs to remember that being alone right now doesn't mean she always will be. Seasons change, people come. New chapters begin, often in the quietest moments of life. Society often places immense pressure on women to maintain active social lives, to be constantly surrounded by a circle of friends that are not only present but thriving. There is a belief that a woman's value is somehow linked to the number of people she surrounds herself with, and more specifically, the depth and quality of those relationships. This pressure is reinforced everywhere, from movies and television shows where women's friendships are central to their identity, to the influencers and celebrities whose personal lives are shared openly and celebrated. Social media, in particular, exacerbates this dynamic, constantly bombarding women with images of perfectly curated lives filled with laughter, gatherings, and seemingly effortless connections. For many women, this social pressure is overwhelming. The expectation that they should have a vibrant and full social life becomes a benchmark for their self-worth. If they're not frequently out with friends, attending social events, or posting pictures of their inner circle, they may begin to feel inadequate or isolated. There's a constant, quiet comparison to the ideal social woman, one who effortlessly juggles personal, professional, and social spheres with grace. When reality doesn't align with this image, feelings of inadequacy arise. This societal expectation can be especially damaging for women who may not naturally fit into these social molds. Not every woman is inclined to be constantly surrounded by others. Some may value time alone, others may struggle with social anxiety, and some may have experienced the pain of friendships falling apart, making them wary of forming new connections. Yet, despite these different personalities, the expectation remains that a woman must have friends, and not just any friends, but the right kind, the ones who make her life seem fuller, brighter, and more successful. Compounding this pressure is the pervasive notion that women should be emotionally invested in their friendships in a particular way. It's not enough to simply have friends. The friendships need to be deep, meaningful, and often, in some circles, the ultimate expression of who a woman is. Women are taught that their emotional fulfillment should be derived from these relationships. There's an implicit suggestion that a woman without friends or a woman who is alone by choice is somehow lacking. The idea that women should always be surrounded by a tight-knit group of friends who laugh, cry, support one another, and even solve problems together becomes almost a mandate for what a complete woman should look like. This social pressure doesn't just affect women with few or no friends, it also harms those who feel overwhelmed by the constant demand for connection. The expectation to maintain friendships, especially those that don't come naturally or require constant effort, can create burnout. The energy it takes to keep up with social commitments, attending events, remembering birthdays, staying in touch can feel exhausting, especially for those who find solace in solitude or quieter, more meaningful interactions. The fear of being judged or worse, rejected for not meeting these social standards leads some women to compromise their own needs for the sake of fitting in. They might participate in social events out of obligation, rather than genuine desire, or they might maintain relationships that aren't fulfilling simply to avoid the stigma of being without friends. In this way, the social pressure to conform not only affects a woman's self-esteem but can distort her sense of identity, pushing her to adopt a lifestyle that isn't true to herself. This culture of emphasis on social connections creates a false dichotomy. Either you have a group of friends who affirm your worth or you are somehow incomplete. The complexity of human relationships is often ignored in favor of a simplified version of what it means to be socially successful. In reality, friendships and human connections can take many forms. Some are fleeting, others are deep and lifelong, and some may only bloom during particular seasons of life. Yet the pressure to meet a one-size-fits-all model of friendship leaves little room for these diverse experiences to be appreciated. In truth, a woman's worth should never be tied to her social circle or the number of friends she has. While friendships are important and can be sources of great joy and support, they should never define a woman's value or sense of self. We need to move away from the rigid expectations of social life and recognize that everyone's journey is unique. Being content with one's own company, investing in personal growth, and seeking meaningful connections, whether those connections are few or many, are all equally valuable. Society needs to embrace the idea that women, like everyone else, can be complete and whole on their own terms. The emotional impact of loneliness on a woman, particularly when she finds herself without close friends, can be profound and multifaceted. It's not just about the absence of others. It's about the quiet, often painful ache that comes from not feeling seen or understood. Loneliness, when experienced over time, can erode a woman's sense of self-worth, cloud her thoughts, and leave her feeling adrift in the world, disconnected from the very people she once might have relied on for support and companionship. At first, loneliness can feel like a gentle emptiness, a space where there once was laughter and connection. But as time passes, it deepens, the empty moments stretch out longer, and the loneliness becomes more pronounced. A woman might begin to notice it in the quiet moments of the day, the lack of a call to check in, the absence of someone to share an exciting piece of news with, or the realization that when she faces struggles, there's no one to lean on for comfort. It's in these moments that the weight of loneliness becomes heavier, not just emotionally, but also mentally. Her mind starts to wander, filling in the blanks with self-doubt and questioning. Am I unworthy of love? Am I too difficult to be friends with? These thoughts can spiral, reinforcing the idea that perhaps something is inherently wrong with her. For many women, loneliness feels like a reflection of personal failure. The messages in society about the importance of community, friendship, and belonging can make the experience of being alone feel like a deep personal flaw. A woman without friends may feel as though she's failed to meet an unspoken societal benchmark, and the result is a feeling of shame. She may look at others and wonder why they seem so effortlessly connected, why their social circles thrive while hers has shrunk or never truly existed. This self-imposed judgment can be harsh and relentless, further isolating her from seeking connection. The emotional pain of loneliness is often magnified by the belief that she is somehow undeserving or incapable of meaningful relationships. Another emotional consequence of loneliness is the overwhelming sense of sadness that can accompany it. While isolation can sometimes feel like a temporary phase for those who experience it long-term, it can turn into a kind of grief. This sadness may not always be a loud, obvious pain, but rather a quiet undercurrent that runs through everyday life. It can appear unexpectedly, a pang in the chest, when she sees friends laughing together, when she hears about plans made that she wasn't included in. Each reminder of the emotional connection she lacks can feel like a loss, one that deepens with time. Over time, this sadness may evolve into a feeling of hopelessness. The loneliness may begin to feel permanent, as though no matter what she does or how much she yearns for connection, she will remain on the outside looking in. Loneliness also affects one's mental health, often leading to feelings of anxiety and depression. The mind, when left to its own devices in solitude, can become a breeding ground for negative thoughts. Without a supportive circle to challenge distorted thinking, a woman may begin to believe that she is destined to be alone, that her worth is not enough to draw others in. This mental state can lead to anxiety, especially in social situations. The fear of being judged or misunderstood becomes more intense, and she may avoid social interactions altogether. The thought of meeting new people or re-establishing old connections can feel daunting, as the pressure of getting it right looms over every potential encounter. She may worry about being too much or not enough, constantly second guessing her words, actions, and even her very presence in social situations. Depression, too, can become a constant companion in the absence of friendship. The emotional toll of being alone, coupled with the internalized belief that something is wrong with her, can chip away at her sense of hope and motivation. Simple tasks may feel overwhelming, and the joy she once derived from hobbies or activities may be diminished. The lack of social support can make it more difficult to cope with life's challenges. When there is no one to confide in, to share burdens with, every hardship feels heavier, more isolating. The loneliness becomes not just a feeling, but a pervasive state of being that colors everything. Yet, amidst this emotional impact, it's essential to acknowledge that the pain of loneliness, though deeply difficult, is not insurmountable. Overcoming loneliness isn't a quick fix, it's a journey that involves self compassion, patience, and sometimes the courage to seek help. Reaching out, even when it feels impossible, is one step in the healing process. But for a woman who is experiencing the emotional toll of loneliness, it's important to remember that the pain doesn't define her. It is a moment in time, not an irreversible condition. The hope for connection remains, and while the path may be long, the possibility of meaningful relationships and self discovery is always on the horizon. In the quiet solitude that often accompanies loneliness, there lies an unexpected opportunity for a woman to rediscover herself. When friendships fade or remain elusive, it can feel like a loss of identity, a disconnect from the person she once was a hope to be. Yet, beneath this silence, there is a deeper process unfolding, one of self reflection, growth, and understanding. While the absence of companionship can bring feelings of isolation, it also offers a rare chance for a woman to reconnect with her innermost self, to ask the difficult questions that can ultimately lead to a more authentic, confident existence. Rediscovering oneself begins with the space to simply be. Without the constant pull of social obligations or the influence of others' expectations, there is room to focus on what truly matters to her. She might find herself drawn to hobbies or passions that had been neglected in the past. Perhaps she picks up a long forgotten creative project, rediscovers the joy of reading, or explores a new interest she never had time for before. These activities are not merely distractions from loneliness, they are paths that lead back to her authentic self, to the person who existed before societal roles, relationships, or outside judgments took over. In the solitude of these moments, she remembers what makes her unique, what sparks joy in her heart, and begins to rebuild her sense of identity from the inside out. One of the most profound aspects of this rediscovery is the opportunity to reconnect with her values and beliefs. When friendships are central to a woman's life, she may unknowingly begin to prioritize the opinions of others over her own, often compromising her own desires, needs, or principles in the process. Being alone provides the space to reflect on what she truly stands for, what her passions are, and where her boundaries lie. This reconnection with personal values allows her to develop a clearer sense of direction and purpose, independent of the influence of others. It's not about rejecting the importance of relationships. It's about building a foundation of self awareness and self respect that can support meaningful connections in the future. In the absence of a social network, a woman may also come face to face with aspects of herself that she might have ignored or avoided in the past. Without the distractions of social life, old wounds, unresolved feelings, and past experiences rise to the surface. This can be a difficult and uncomfortable process, as it often involves confronting fears, insecurities, or even regrets. Yet these emotional challenges offer a chance for healing and personal growth. Through introspection, therapy, journaling, or other methods of self exploration, she can learn to understand and accept these parts of herself, ultimately transforming pain into strength. This healing process is essential for personal growth, as it allows her to shed old narratives that may have held her back and replace them with a more empowered sense of self. Rediscovery also brings with it the opportunity to reframe one's sense of worth. When surrounded by others, it's easy for a woman to measure her value by her relationships, by the approval or affection of friends. However, in solitude, she must confront the idea that her worth is not contingent on external validation. Learning to embrace her individuality without the need for constant external affirmation fosters an internal sense of security. She begins to realize that her value is inherent, not determined by the presence or absence of others in her life. This realization is liberating, as it frees her from the shackles of comparison, judgment, or societal expectations. It's a reclaiming of her power, an understanding that she is whole in and of herself, regardless of her social status. Rediscovery often leads to a renewed sense of independence. Many women find strength in the realization that they are capable of navigating life on their own terms. They can make decisions based on their needs, desires, and goals rather than on what others expect or want. This newfound independence can be both empowering and exhilarating. The ability to trust one's judgment and to take ownership of one's life fosters a deep sense of confidence that ripples out into other areas of existence. No longer reliant on others for validation or direction, she feels more connected to her own inner wisdom and intuition. Through this process of self-rediscovery, a woman might come to understand that loneliness is not a permanent condition, but rather a transformative phase that opens the door to greater self-awareness. It is in these quiet moments of introspection that she can redefine who she is, who she wants to become, and what she truly needs from relationships. In time, the absence of friends becomes not a source of shame or sorrow, but an opportunity for growth and reinvention. Rediscovering herself doesn't mean she will never desire companionship again. It means that when she does form new connections, she will do so with a stronger sense of who she is and what she deserves. Solitude often carries a negative connotation, especially in a world that emphasizes connection, socializing, and communal living. For many, being alone feels synonymous with loneliness, sadness, or a lack of fulfillment. However, solitude, when embraced intentionally, can be one of the most empowering and transformative experiences a person can undergo. For a woman who has found herself without close friends or social connections, solitude offers a unique opportunity to connect more deeply with herself, to explore her inner world, and to tap into a strength that may have been previously overlooked or underappreciated. In this space, she discovers not just who she is, but who she is capable of becoming. At its core, solitude provides the time and space to reflect. Without the constant noise of external opinions, pressures, and distractions, a woman can look inward and engage in self-exploration. It's in these quiet moments that she can ask the tough questions: what do I truly want from life? What are my goals and why do they matter? What am I afraid of and what can I learn from those fears? Solitude creates a safe environment for deep introspection where she can honestly assess her life, her choices, and her desires. This period of reflection is not just about self-analysis, but also about self-awareness, a crucial step in becoming more attuned to her authentic needs and aspirations. One of the greatest gifts solitude offers is the ability to reconnect with one's passions and interests. In the bustle of everyday life, particularly when surrounded by others, it's easy to lose sight of what genuinely brings joy and fulfillment. The influence of friends, family, and societal expectations can steer a woman away from the activities or pursuits that once sparked her creativity and enthusiasm. But in solitude, she has the freedom to explore those passions once again, whether it's through writing, painting, hiking, learning a new skill, or simply daydreaming. With no one to impress or please, she can indulge in her curiosities without judgment. This freedom allows for personal growth, as she rediscovered parts of herself that may have been neglected or forgotten. The sense of accomplishment and satisfaction that comes from pursuing her interests on her own terms nurtures her confidence and self-esteem. In solitude, there is also the opportunity to cultivate emotional resilience. Life is filled with challenges, personal setbacks, failures, disappointments, and these can often feel more overwhelming when faced with the weight of others' expectations or opinions. When alone, a woman learns to rely on herself for comfort, motivation, and support. She becomes her own cheerleader, her own source of strength. This does not mean she avoids or suppresses her emotions, but rather that she learns to navigate them independently, developing healthier ways of coping. Over time, solitude helps her build a solid foundation of self-trust, where she knows she can face difficult emotions without feeling overwhelmed by them. The ability to process grief, anxiety, or frustration in solitude without external distractions or influences creates a deeper emotional maturity. Solitude also fosters independence. In a world that often encourages women to look outside themselves for validation, love, or affirmation, solitude forces a woman to turn inward. She begins to understand that her happiness and sense of self-worth do not rely on the presence of others. She discovers that she can find fulfillment, peace, and joy within herself without needing constant reassurance or approval. This realization is empowering, as it frees her from the need for external validation and encourages her to take ownership of her life and decisions. It's not about becoming isolated or detached from others. It's about developing a strong sense of self that doesn't hinge on anyone else's opinion or presence. Solitude can lead to a heightened sense of mindfulness and presence. Without the constant need to entertain or be entertained, a woman becomes more attuned to the present moment. She learns to appreciate the small details of life: the sound of birds outside her window, the feeling of a cup of tea warming her hands, the beauty of a sunset. In this space, she is free from the pressure to multitask or perform, allowing her to simply exist and experience life as it is. This mindfulness fosters a deeper connection to the world around her and enhances her ability to find contentment in simple pleasures. The power of solitude is not in its ability to isolate, but in its capacity to cultivate a deeper, more intimate relationship with oneself. It provides the foundation for self-empowerment, self-expression, and self-awareness. It is in these moments of quiet reflection that a woman learns to trust her intuition, honor her needs, and embrace her individuality. The strength she builds in solitude enables her to approach the world and her relationships with a sense of balance and clarity. When she eventually steps out of this space, she does so with a deeper understanding of who she is and a stronger sense of her own worth, free from the dependence on others for her happiness or validation. While solitude and self-reflection can be deeply enriching, the human desire for connection remains a fundamental aspect of life. No matter how empowered or self-sufficient a woman becomes in her journey of rediscovery, the hope for connection, the longing to be seen, understood, and valued by others never truly disappears. The absence of close friendships or meaningful relationships can feel like a void, but it's important to remember that the desire for connection isn't a sign of weakness or inadequacy. Rather, it's a natural and beautiful part of being human. It's this hope for connection that fuels the possibility of future bonds, relationships, and communities that are built on shared understanding, empathy, and respect. The journey toward meaningful connection is not an immediate one, nor should it be. Relationships take time to build, and they often emerge when least expected. The hope for connection doesn't mean rushing into friendships out of desperation or fear of being alone. It's about remaining open to the idea that the right people, the right relationships can appear when the time is right. This doesn't mean waiting passively for others to come into your life. Rather, it's about being open to the possibility of connection while continuing to live authentically and confidently on your own terms. When a woman's sense of self-worth and identity is rooted in her own understanding of herself, she becomes more likely to attract people who resonate with her values, passions, and energy. One of the most important aspects of hope for connection is the belief that meaningful relationships are still possible, no matter the stage of life. It's easy to feel that opportunities for deep friendships or romantic connections have passed by, especially when loneliness has been a long-standing companion. However, life is full of unexpected twists and turns. Just as circumstances and personal growth change, so too do the people around us. New opportunities for connection can arise in places we least expect, at a work event, a class, a community activity, or even online. The key is maintaining an openness to others and allowing oneself to be vulnerable enough to share parts of the self that might otherwise remain hidden. By staying hopeful and open to the idea of connection, a woman makes herself available to the possibility of new friendships and relationships that align with her evolving self. Another important aspect of the hope for connection is the understanding that not all relationships need to be perfect or fit the conventional mold. Sometimes deep connections are found in unexpected forms. A woman may connect with someone over a shared passion for a particular hobby, a mutual appreciation for a certain book, or a common life experience. These relationships may not follow the traditional blueprint of friendship, but they are no less valuable. In fact, they can offer a richer, more diverse form of connection, one that is free from societal pressures or expectations. The hope for connection is also the hope for these unique, authentic bonds that offer a sense of belonging, acceptance, and emotional fulfillment. Additionally, the hope for connection is often intertwined with the hope for deeper emotional intimacy. It's not just about filling a social quota or being surrounded by people, it's about the genuine desire to be understood and to understand others. A woman who has experienced loneliness may crave this level of emotional intimacy where her vulnerabilities are acknowledged and respected, and where she can offer the same understanding in return. True connection is built on trust, empathy, and shared vulnerability. It is this kind of emotional intimacy that provides the strength to weather life's challenges together, to offer support during difficult times, and to celebrate the joys of life with others who truly understand what it means to be human. The hope for connection is also about patience and resilience. It requires the courage to continue reaching out even when previous attempts have been met with disappointment. It's about accepting that not every connection will be lasting and not every relationship will be deep. But with each new encounter, there is the possibility that something meaningful could emerge. It's this sense of hope and persistence that eventually leads to the kinds of relationships that are not only satisfying but life-affirming. The hope for connection is a reminder that humans are meant to connect. It's a beacon of light that guides of periods of solitude and loneliness, keeping her heart open to the beauty of shared experiences and mutual support. It's the recognition that while solitude can lead to profound self-discovery and growth, connection with others is equally important for nurturing the soul. The journey toward meaningful connection is never linear, and it may take time, but the hope for these bonds rooted in mutual respect, vulnerability, and understanding remains a powerful force that can transform lives and build the relationships that help sustain us.